This happened the better part of a year ago. DM removed expertise from rogues, said it was to balance out the increase he'd given us in damage. This damage increase was 1d4 extra damage on every finesse weapon attack. He also removed sneak attack. The campaign ended several months ago after he left the server. It was already on hiatus, but he was running another campaign. He gave the server no warning before he left, despite having a campaign he was running on the side. In hindsight, he was kind of a piece of work. What's the logic behind nerfing skill checks because of an increase in damage? They're used for two separate things the majority of the time. Well, I guess the answer to the logic question is, there is no logic. And I really need to stop having such lofty expectations. Now that my Eberron 5th edition campaign is over, I want to talk about the only horror story I've had of an IRL friend of ours derailing a campaign, and flamed us all to cut ties. Cast, the DM, my close friend, got me into a lot of good music, and this is his first campaign. Pan, this'll be relevant. Rogue, only known for a few years, but a great guy. Bi, but closeted. Fighter, known since we were kids, literally the only straight guy. Me, the cleric, first campaign, and a freshly out lesbian. Gunslinger, our problem. Not mates, but I know of him from school, and DM is close with him. He's gay. Our story starts with us meeting in the street and a strange old man giving us a book. We almost immediately get mugged for it and head for a cave our attackers came out of. We clear out the kobolds. I save one who wants to come with us, and we leave. But after only 2 sessions, everything starts going wrong very quickly. While in town and alone, Gunslinger gets attacked again, shoots at the bad guys, and runs for a shop he's meeting the others at. After a few minutes, he gets paranoid and shoots the shopkeeper and runs, thinking the shopkeeper was in on the whole thing. Gunslinger and the others finally get to the tavern me and our kobold NPC are waiting at. I ask him why he's got blood on him, and he very edgily just says, "Taking care of business." Literally less than 2 minutes later, a guy simply asks Gunslinger about the book, and shocker, Gunslinger shoots him. However, running ain't an option here, as we have to fight off the bar staff, the shot guy, and his friend. Gunslinger and the kobold both get hurt pretty bad mid-fight, and given Gunslinger has started to fight for no reason as far as my character knows, I think this is a good time to RP and just lay low and heal the kobold. After killing all but one of them, Gunslinger starts yelling at me in and out of character for not healing him instead. I try to explain I'm just gonna try to RP here, and there wasn't a reason for me to trust him, but he keeps on going and doesn't drop it for the rest of the session. And the next session. Lovely. We got a guy alive, shot guy's friend who's now missing a foot and is scared for his life, back to my house and against my wishes. Gunslinger interrogates him. We have some good RP and he admits they knew the book was powerful and all that and begs us to let him go. Gee, wonder what Gunslinger will do next? Yeah, he of course shoots an unarmed begging for mercy captive. Bear in mind, Gunslinger is the only one here who has been playing in a campaign before. The murder hobo is the only one with experience. Yeah. My character shouts at the Gunslinger as he's just murdered someone in my home without even, talking to us. Only saying, he was a loose end. Great. Now we're all fugitives. Rogue and Fighter almost died trying to get supplies, and now the whole town is after us. And that's how our 5th and final session ended. But oh boy, we're not done. We stay on the call for a bit, as despite the situation, we've had a fun night. It's Rogue's birthday, we've got a friend in the call listening in on the session, people are drinking, good times. And then, Gunslinger suddenly says he's leaving the campaign, claiming he's not gelling with the group, and goes. But as soon as he does, DM tells us he's got a text from the Gunslinger. Apparently, he actually hates the DM and the rest of us. Says we're shouting slurs and the DM's been homophobic to him, all ending in the Gunslinger blocking all of us. We're all deeply confused as to how a mostly LGBT plus party is anti-LGBT plus, but have no clue where any of this is coming from, especially DM. However, over the next week, we piece together all the Slinger's claims and why he said them. First, the homophobia was because the DM said about a year ago that he didn't understand Pride as an event. Although DM regrets saying it, it wasn't really homophobic, and it was a year ago. That's that, his most damning claim. Secondly, the slur he claims we said, I guess it was him hearing the guy watching us play? Mishearing, by the way. And finally, why he said all this. DM had heard from a friend that Gunslinger had been doing the same to, well, everyone he'd known from school. Instead of saying goodbye and moving on, he was claiming his friends were bigots and blocking them. Probably so he could tell victim stories to his new friends at university. Yikes. So in the end, we restarted from the cave, had a great time with the rest of Eberron over the next 6 months, and now our group is on our 4th campaign together. Nobody has heard from our friendly neighborhood murder hobo since, and even though the DM took the whole thing pretty rough, we convinced him he did nothing wrong, and Gunslinger was just a toxic friend. A very, very weird toxic friend. The end. TLDR, experienced player murder hobos and shouts at beginners, ruining a campaign before proceeding to cut ties with us in the most volatile way possible. We've already covered murder hobos killing their way through a campaign and ruining it for the rest of the players, but the real horror story here is the toxicity on display from this guy. It's basically gaslighting. He's trying to convince a mostly LGBT plus party to, I don't know, believe they're homophobic? Which is a strange route to take, but, I mean, alright, I guess. It clearly didn't work out, but it did shake the DM up, which shows that even the most silly of gaslighting claims can really hurt a guy. Best thing I can recommend, as always, is to separate, distance, and walk away. Glad they got rid of that guy and continued their campaign. Alright, next story. I used to play with this guy that had been playing D&D since the 80s. This was the 3.5 era, and this guy was serious about it. Had a self-built table with projection screen maps, thousands of minis he painted, and the works. I lived maybe an hour and a half away and went regularly. The DM had an NPC ranger that was tagging along with the party. My brother-in-law had never played D&D, but enjoyed things like Lord of the Rings games and other stuff like that. I figured he'd enjoy the game, especially at the place that had all the bells and whistles. I got permission from the DM about bringing him along, as we had a fairly good-sized group. DM says, of course, he can come. I asked if we need to build a character ahead of time. He said, not to bother. My brother-in-law can just run the ranger. Okay, cool. It's a game night when we arrive. The player character version of the ranger isn't ready. The DM puts the game on hold for at least a couple hours. My brother-in-law is getting kinda angsty at this point. Once the game starts, we encounter some cave trolls fighting us from the shaft to the ground. First turn, Ranger says he moves in to attack, and is promptly grabbed by a cave troll and killed via an attack of opportunity. Maybe he wasn't killed straight away, just grappled and beaten to death. Well, that's a shame. Waste of a good setup too. Wonder what I would do with that much money. Anyway, next story. My friend and cosplayer encouraged me to share this story. A few years ago, I, at the time 19, female, befriended some people interested in D&D in college. This included a DM, 26 male at the time, a DM with some experience who offered to give us an introduction. After a successful one-shot, we decided to play a long-term campaign with him as DM. Later, I also took the role as GM myself, with the same group, and we alternated our two campaigns. Our first year and a half was great. He ran a module and we all enjoyed ourselves. DM and I often talked during those times, whose campaign it would be that week, to ask advice on how to be a dungeon master, college, etc. I saw him as kind of a big brother. During one of our D&D Today get-togethers, the topic of relationships came up. My personal opinion was, and still is, not to date the people in my D&D group. Too much drama for me. And the others agreed. At the end of the second year, things changed. In the middle of the night, DM, out of nowhere, sent me a text telling me he loved me. At the same time, I knew he was partying, so I assumed he sent a drunken text, which he confirmed in the morning. However, a part of me doubted him, and my doubt was soon proven correct. Not much later. I am a very vocal player, so I was often in the spotlight, but after the drunken text, the attention changed. Instead of a positive experience, where there is a collaboration between the GM and the player, I felt like he was trying to punish me instead. It was subtle, only in small things, at least at first. I had a hard time understanding what had changed, but I started to dread each session. I also have some hard boundaries in-game, such as sexual assault, which, after an explicit encounter, were discussed, and I also love making backstories, which can be slightly darker, though will always avoid those specific topics. After that first encounter, DM kept including near sexual assault experiences with other players. He also created an NPC in Campaign 1 that was infatuated with my first character. This NPC was angry because, during the early days, my character tricked the NPC when he was drunk into revealing info because he thought they had slept together? In the end, just before the end of Campaign 1, where everybody died, the NPC wanted to buy her as a sex slave. Maybe even more disturbing was that he added backstory to my first character, unbeknownst to me, the player who played the character, which included... I'm not reading that. That was only revealed after the end, but would have come into play later in the campaign if continued. After Campaign 1, he started a homebrew campaign, and again, I had an elaborate character backstory. At the time, I thought it would be a fresh start, and things would turn around. And then, the COVID happened, and my mental health declined greatly. I didn't feel comfortable anymore playing my second character, and asked to change. While not entirely happy because he made plans for her, he agreed. So I made character 3 the most innocent and uncomplicated character possible and made clear to the DM what exactly I was having problems with, and what would help me feel comfortable playing. I played one session with character 3. He did every single thing I asked him not to do, such as put all the attention on me. I wanted to relax a bit and be more in the background. Character 3's backstory was immediately dealt with, so I would have to retire her after a few sessions. I wanted to play her for an undefined period of time, until I felt a little bit better mentally. Forced Character 3 to make a decision which secretly also took away some of her abilities. This was level 5 if I remember correctly, and something I had already made clear was one of the things I was not capable of dealing with when I was in good mental health, let alone poor mental health. I couldn't handle it much longer, as I didn't want to destroy his or my campaign, or destroy any friendships. I decided to only confide in one of my cosplayer friends to make sure I wasn't overreacting or imagining things. She helped me, and I quit the DM's campaign after another conversation with him. DM continued to play in my game, though. Then a few weeks later, the DM and I had another conversation where he suddenly asked me out. I said no. He asked if we could try it, and I said no again. He confirmed that the text was premeditated and had not sent it when drunk, but that he had backed out because he knew my personal standpoint. In the end, we concluded we would continue as friends. DM continued playing in my campaign. Why? Anyway, but he became attention-seeking and domineering, often trying to overrule me as a DM or trying to distract other players. This went on for about a year? Currently, he is still playing in my campaign. I wish I had kicked him out back then, but I didn't see what was happening, so I tried protecting everybody from my drama. Now I'm stuck, but I don't plan on inviting him to my next campaign, and don't plan on ever joining his ever again. Okay, I will admit, I was being a bit coy in my read, but I do understand that separating from problem players, it's hard. It is really hard, especially when they're your friend. Even someone as blatantly toxic as this guy. It is still really hard for people to pull out of that relationship and to separate, even though it's just a D&D game. And yeah, I can already see the comments, oh, there's no real power, oh, it's just D&D. But it's an active social part of your life. I mean, you're getting together with these people 4 hours a week. That's a lot of time. And yeah, that is going to matter. It's going to make a difference in your relationships. And when you kick someone out of your game, I mean, it is an incredibly personal move some of the time, especially when you're friends with them. But this guy, he sucks. It is really bad to keep people like this in your life. And my best advice, like I said before, walk away, separate, do your best to get out of that relationship because it's not going to end well. It is not going to end well. Well, what a lovely way to end off this episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed this episode, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment Dead Ranger to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.